Hi guys! Today is going to be a very in-depth tutorial about how to use Vroid. I hope you guys enjoy. Okay, so first things first, when you get into Vroid, go to the General tab right here. So the outline is pretty much personal preference when it comes to hair outline, face outline, and so on. If you want to move your character, like how I did, I have a mouse with a roller wheel, so you can use the roller wheel, move her around. Right click turns her like this. Okay, and then we're going to fix the cardinal sin of Vroid, which is rim light and shading. Now you're going to want to make the hair strength, make that all the way down, and then compression all the way up. You're going to want to do this for body as well. Then shading. Personally, I leave the normal shading on the hair, but you can turn that off doing the same thing, shading area, shading hardness. Definitely do it with face. Turn that all off. And then you're ready to start with your Vroid. So let's start from the first tab. So first thing you have on the face, you have a lot of different toggles to adjust to your personal preference. So you can zoom in. You can make it slide it down, up, so on and so forth. So just fiddle with that a little bit. For eyes, eye shape, eyebrows, nose, etc. Same with expressions. So a lot of the expressions are very exaggerated. I would suggest at least like making them a little bit more mild in places. Especially joy. Joy is the most exaggerated one. You can always fiddle around and so like this is the mouth at the very bottom. Make it a little bit smaller, or if your eyes are clipping, especially after you have done your own textures or something like that, you might want to fiddle with the eyes or the eyebrows. Just make sure that they don't clip, and you can always come back to this after you've put it into your software. If you're doing crazy faces like I've done, to try to test it and the eyebrows are clipping a little bit. As for textures, so what I was saying about before, so in each thing, most of these tabs have a design or how you want it to be sized and shaped and stuff like that, and then they have a texture tab. The texture tab is basically, so this is the mouth, there's the tongue, this is the inside of the mouth, and this is the teeth. So sclera, that is the, if you can see here, this is the eye right here. Eyeline. Most of them have a, so default image is the base image. So when you're on each part, you have many different options. I'm going to disappear for this little part so you can see. So first of all, we have the cursor up here, the brush to draw, like so, and then the eraser tool. So if you want to get rid of any part, just use the eraser. Then we have blur. Blur on here isn't as good as on some other softwares, but it does come in handy. As for brush and eraser, if you would like to change the type, so if you would like to draw a little bit more shaded, you might want to use this one. You want circle shade, it's a little bit more dense. That straight line, it does have a little tilt at the ends, like that, and then solid. Top is always solid. Then we have the thickness. So if you want a very thin brush, you might want to move it down to do, like, say you're doing eyelashes or something. And you can always zoom in. Move your character again using the center roller. It is very helpful Like whether you have Mac or anything, make sure you have a mouse that has like left click, right click, and rollerball. And you can also, if you would prefer, it's a lot messier for the face anyway, but you can draw on the actual face as well. And then layer. So if you have over here, there are options for different layers. There's the default image, which is this one. You can add on top. So if you're trying to do a fancy eyeshadow and you want something a little lighter on the top, you can always like either use this one or a different one. Use a different color, etc. And you can change the opacity. So if you don't want it quite so bright, you can move it up and down however you'd like. But that works for all of them: eyelashes, eyebrows. The only issue with eyebrows is making sure that they don't clip through when you're using your capture software. Making sure that they, like, when you move your eyebrows up and down, that they don't clip if you are to make your own image. Irises, obviously your eyes. I find it most helpful to use a secondary art program. So personally, I use Clip Studio Paint, and to get it into there, you just right click on it. This works for any texture. Right click, export, and then it will pop up with your files. You can save it wherever you like. You can dedicate a specific folder to Vroid or to your specific models. So again, that's right click, export, save it wherever you'd like, and then you can go on over to Clip Studio, Photoshop, whatever your preferred art software is. As I said, I personally use Clip Studio Paint, but if you are trying to use it for both photos and VTubing/art projects, I would probably suggest more so Photoshop or something along those lines. But yeah, and then you can just draw it over the top, the same size. So in here, if you are making your iris width, if you make it larger, narrower, shorter, anything like that, the size of the drawing will always stay the same. So if you want to draw something that you like and then fiddle with it and the size that you want, shape you want within Vroid, that is a-okay. Eye highlights, I personally would recommend just straight up the normal ones and draw your own. You could do this in this or within your art software. There's also a very handy tool, although I probably wouldn't use it for this just because light always hits from the one direction. But there is a mirror tool, so if you're making clothing or if you're making anything where it needs to be symmetrical, you can draw it on here. So as you see, I probably wouldn't suggest it for highlights or for eyes necessarily, just because you would want them to be symmetrical. So you would want it on this side and this side if the light is coming from this direction per se. As for the skin, it's a little scary to look at like this, but again, drawing in a drawing software or in Vroid. Most things you can do in Vroid if you would like to. Just choosing said skin color, I tend to go along with a lot of like the oranges. Personally, I find it works the best, just coloring it over. And then taking it up a little bit for the orange, taking it up a little bit, and going for the contour. Kind of like if you're doing face contour, you might want to use one of the hushed ones just to get around. Blur sometimes freaks out when it's your own colors, or it does for me. I don't know why. I found taking it into Clip Studio very helpful. It also means that you have them on separate layers as well if you need that later on. Okay, next part is hair. There are many different options when it comes to hair. You can find ones off Booth, paid for or free ones. There is a method to importing them, it's pretty simple. So if you are to save any hair presets or anything like that, it will show up in here. Okay, so to import a preset, you want to download and save, type into your search bar %appdata%, and then it will bring you to roaming. You're going to want to press app data here, local low, and then look down for Pixiv. Here you will find Vroid Studio. Go into hair presets, find a number that is higher than any of the other ones you have. So if you are up to 9 like me, it would be number 10. Paste in the hair preset that you have gotten from somebody via commission or from booth. Paste it in here, then make sure it has the exact same wording format. Don't edit it in any other way, just right click, rename, and make sure it is preset all lowercase, no space, don't have any space, and then the next number in the line. After this process, you would need to refresh Vroid, and then it should be under your presets. It might say a random name, or it might just say preset 10, but it should be there. So as for making your own hair, let's get into that. So we have two options. We have a procedural group and we have a freehand group. There's also the base hair already here. Okay, let's put the default face back on. So if you want to import any of the textures that you have made after exporting, I should probably point this out, there is a little import button. So it's similar to when you export it, you right click, import, and then that will bring up your files as well. Make sure it is set as a PNG if possible, especially if there's any kind of minor transparency or anything like that. Okay, back to hair. So we have the base hair, which a lot of the time I personally don't leave. I just draw the color so that they don't look bald underneath on the body texture and on the face texture right up here. But I will leave it on right now for demonstration purposes. Okay, so first of all, we have a procedural group. A procedural group is a group that will remain consistent. Let me put mirror on for this. This is very helpful. Mirroring is very helpful when it comes to the back and front for sides like this. When it comes to this way, I mean, not really. You probably don't want your hair sticking out like that. I keep it on for sides. So first things first, this is the hair mesh. See all of these green little dots? This is how you form most of your hair. The hair can only be as long as the mesh is. So if you want longer hair, make sure your mesh is longer. Moving these all down. Oh, let me turn mirror off. Taking these down and so on. As for the procedural hair group, I'm going to poof my model again so you can see all of the panels. We have hair texture parameters, so if you want your hair to be thicker, highlight position. This is the default highlight. I personally wouldn't recommend to have it on, so turning that to black will make it disappear. Shade color, you can set that to white. Base color, you can set to whatever you would like, but setting it to white for now. Just because I personally make my own hair textures, and I'll show you how to do that in a moment, or at least a base one, which you can go from there or find one online to use as well. So we have offset. Basically, if you have a specific pattern on your hair and you would like to move it over, you can do that. For procedural groups, you can move singular hair by clicking on here or clicking on each one on there. If you want to move it as a group, just clicking on all of it. Alright. Hair parameters. So width again. Thickness is more so up and down this kind of way. Like that. Width is the opposite to that. Twist if you would like your hair to have a little curl to it. You can do that. Smoothness. Bottomless triangle. So that's the thickness, as you can see up here. Flat. Super thin hair. You can always just fiddle around with this and see what you personally like. For the most part, I tend to keep to diamond, and then I might adjust. So the closer to the left-hand side, the closer to the scalp you are overall. So you can see this is becoming more flat. The higher up, the more flat it gets. The lower down, the more pointed. You can also do this for the bottom of the hair. If you want a flat edge, you can adjust some of these points. It will become a straight edge hairpiece. As for height, you can shorten it using this, especially for procedural hair groups. The offset is also mesh. This part is primarily fixing the mesh, but I do find it easiest to just fiddle with it by hand. Fit to head, it's more pulling it in at the bottom, pushing it out a little bit, and so on. Okay, procedural parameters. So again, length, you can fiddle with that, but it will only ever go as long as the hair mesh is. So if you want it longer, you're gonna have to slide that down. Okay, the part that is very important, position. Position determines how far to the right it will go. So if you want it behind the ear, which I definitely suggest, use position here. But hey, it's not reaching this part. Maybe I want to push it further so it'll go there. Do not move the position anymore. What you're going to want to do is see the next one, interval. So this is going to push it around to the other side. If you want to make sure it's even, you can do that now. But there's gaps. We'll get to that in a second. First, depending on how you would like your part, you can move it. You can move it back a little bit if you want that. If you want a side part, you can also do that. For mine, I'm just going to keep it pretty simple right now. As for the gaps, here's where we address that. There's a little thing called hair count right here. So we're going to fix the big old gaps right here. You're going to want to bring up the hair count until all of that is filled in. Like so. So I only needed 11, but you can make more if you would like, or less. It's all personal preference. The hair is always personal preference, just like most of your model. Hairline brings it up and down. It's unlikely that you would use that, but possible. Hair chunkiness. Again, semi near like thickness and so on. Part length. So just fiddle until you find what you would like to have. Again, when it comes to forming, you can always bring out the hair, or you can bring out the center and bring in. This is a very popular anime look of bringing out. You can bring in here, make it a little more poofy at the back. Bring in mirror, bring in the back. Like that kind of thing. You can always adjust with more hair if there's any more gaps. And yeah, For the most part, I would suggest try to keep it around or behind the ear when you're doing procedural groups. You can do bangs or like fringes with this as well. That is very much possible. As well as hoodies, like you might have seen if you have watched any of my older videos. The penguin onesie, I did use hair for that. I just moved a few of the X and Z axes and then went from there. Okay, so for freehand group. Generally, freehand group is best for the front of the hair and the part that you will see the most. Procedural, as you won't see it as much, try to keep that to the back of the hair. Alright, so I'm gonna pop back up again. So we're gonna do a freehand group. First things first is turning off mirror. I'm going to form it to a little bit bigger. And then you use the brush tool here. I'm just going to make hair. I'm not going to think about it. I'm just going to make hair. So what you want to try to do, especially if you're doing an anime style and less of a more realistic style, is see where all of these hairs start right in the center. You're going to want to, mirror. You're going to want to click and drag it all the way down. If you want to make it a little easier, you can click and drag and right click to adjust your model, especially if it's a longer hair. You can do that. If you do make any accidents, any weird shapes, so if you're going down and it decides to go like that, decides to do something a little funky, you can either undo, like Control Z and undo, or you can click on control points and you can adjust where it is. So if it's just the end little part that messed up a little bit, instead of having to redo the entire hair, you can just try to straighten it up a little bit. And so on. I haven't made this perfect, but I'm just showing you guys how to do it. When you're making hair, try to keep things to specific layers where possible. If you made something on both sides, like this, you can always duplicate and then find the hair on one side. So I'm going to do the hair on the right, delete it from the first group, find the hair on the left and delete it from the second one. Then we have a left hair group and a right hair group. Ideally, try to keep it like this, where left and right are separated. It makes it a lot easier when you come to do the bones. Another section, say for any fringes, any bangs, things like that. Again, you can draw them. You can always adjust it. Another one for the other side. Just for demonstration purposes. If I wanted this to match, again, I can always duplicate. That will be on the exact same side. So this one is on this side. As you can see on here. That is on this side. Let me remove this one so you can see better. This is also on this side. If you want to make it entirely identical, right click. So on the first one, right click and duplicate. That brought up this. Right click and flip. Then you have a carbon copy of the first lot of hair. You can always adjust it if they're overlapping. You can always bring them apart, etc. Again, you can do width and thickness, but make sure you have select the cursor activated. If you want to do that, you can do it with singular hairs and offset and width, position, etc. Yeah. If you are trying to do tails or ears or anything like that, like I was saying before with the length of the hair can only stick to the mesh. So the mesh has to be wherever you want the hair. If you are trying to make ears, you're gonna want to morph the mesh, for example, like this. This won't be accurate just because I'm doing it in a rush. Make an ear, make an ear. There's a lot of tutorials on how to make ears and how to do things like that as well. Tails as well. You'll want to add a new freehand group to make a tail and move the entire mesh all the way down like so, primarily at the back, finding the center, and then you can just draw a little tail like so. If you are just doing it in Vroid, it will be attached to the head. This applies for any accessories made with hair, which most of them are, unless they're drawn on. You'll want to do that in Unity, which is a pretty simple process. It just takes a little time depending on the amount of hairs and bones that you have used. Alright, so moving on to bones, as I just mentioned, you are going to want to see where each thing is. So procedural group, that is the back of the hair. Create a single bone group. The amount of bones will depend on how flowy you want your hair personally. It is all personal preference whether you want it more realistic or not. The fixed point is the point at which the bones will basically take into effect. So if you want the hair to only flow from the neck down, you can do that. Stiffness, gravity as to whether if you turn your head, so my hair, if I had gravity, would tilt towards the left right now. Then we have the left side of the hair in another bone group. You can always rename these to remember. When it comes to shorter hair, I would probably suggest 2 or 3, but as I said, you can adjust it. We will get to a point where you can test it out. If you would prefer to test it out now, I'll show you that right now, after we make these other hair groups. Try to make similar hair areas on both sides, a similar amount of hair and fixed point and so on as well. That will really help with the consistency of your model. Alright, and then we're going to make another one for the right, another one for the left. Then this one is for the tail. Create a bone group for the tail. You're going to want to make sure for any tails, the fixed point is pretty much like as close, if not inside of the body as possible. Stiffness, you'll probably want that all the way up so that it stays up. The best option when making a tail so that you can see it is making sure the mesh is as high up as possible. It may not be the look you want necessarily, but if you want it to be seen while using any kind of capture software, that's the best option. Gravity, do not put any gravity on. So if you want to test out what it looks like right now, go to camera/exporter, pose and animation, and then you can choose any of these. So I didn't really adjust the hair right now, so it might be a little floopy, might be a little floppy right now. It's not the best hair I've made, but it is just for demonstration purposes. I think the best representation of how the hair will move is most likely just walking. It's pretty good. It's pretty good. Walking, running, especially to see if anything clips, but you'll see that again in the capture software. If you're doing a tail, definitely try to test out the .vrm file within your capture software prior to working on the tail in Unity, because if you have any issues with bones or with clipping, you're going to want to do that before investing the time in moving all of the bones and the hairs within Unity. Alright, so now that we have the hair pretty much done, as I said, you can create your own hair texture. So say I want it blue. I want light blue hair. Whoops. Do that. Do a little pattern or something. It's more likely where you'd have a highlight, but yeah, if you want a solid color, you can do this. There's, as I said, there's a lot of Vroid tutorials. Every person does their hair differently, so there's no right or wrong way to do it. Just fiddle around, draw on here until you find something that you like. Probably don't use as thick of brush as I did, to be honest, but yeah. Okay, now for the body. So there's a lot of different sliders for this, for the height of your model. You can make them super tall, and so on. Head size, shape, smaller, neck, bust. You can always go higher than these. So if you're thinking, oh, but I want even wider hips, you can type 2, 3, 5. I mean, it looks a little crazy right now, but you can, you can fiddle around with pretty much all of them. Try to make it look a little more okay than keeping every other thing and going 9. Looks a little crazy right now, but yeah, you can always go larger or smaller if you really want. -1, -2, -3. Again, looks a little crazy, but if you did the proportions of other parts of the body, it would probably look a little bit more normal. For body texture, it's gonna look a little crazy. So this is the default body texture, especially when you load in when it's the uniform. You can see here we have the neck. This is not the neck, this is actually the back of the hands. This is the back of the neck. We have the back kind of split. This part is the underarm, and here's also the underarm. Let me put mirroring on. We have the belly, obviously, pretty obvious. This is the feet. Feet/ankles, bottom of the feet. This is actually the base of the head. So this personally is where I color in. I take off the base hair texture, and then whatever hair color I choose, I would color in right here. So you wouldn't see the skin underneath. Then we have the fingers and fingertips. If you want to do any fancy nail polish, that's where to do it. Got the legs and thighs. This is the knee part. It's everything is kind of split into, so front, back, front, back, front, back. You can draw some clothing on here, especially if you want leggings or stockings. The best option is to draw it on here because it will act as if it is stockings or tights or leggings. Again, you can export this and fiddle with it in whatever art software, or you can use the layer system within this. If there's anything that you want to, I do this as well with clothing. If there's anything that you want to see where it should be placed, using a separate layer is the best option. Do not draw on the default layer right now. Going on a separate layer, and then say I want something on the arm. You can draw directly on the model. That is a lot easier for this one than it is for the eye things. Say I want to make a tattoo or something like that. You can draw on here, same as if you draw something else. Like I want to draw, I know that's not symmetrical at all, but yes, you can draw it on here. Do the same as you were doing with other textures. Right click, export, save it somewhere, and then when you are doing your textures, make sure to have your default layer or whatever layer you're using as your flesh tone. and your shadows. Put this layer on top, copy paste it over to that one project, and then again import the final product as a PNG, and then you will have whatever art you want on your model. If that makes any sense. Then over to clothing. You have a few options for clothing, not a crazy ton. If you find any on booths, a lot of the times they say which clothing item the texture has to go on to. When it comes to the uniform long sleeve, you want a dress, pencil skirt dress. This still has, let me take the skirt off underneath. Accessories, I'm going to turn the ribbon off. You have a lot of different options when it comes to, like if you're making a jacket or something like that you wanted a specific color for. Long coat, shirt neck, like this. And you can roll up the sleeve if you want it to be like a fancy top, a business type top. Sleeve width, there's a lot of different toggles, so just fiddle around with this. Puffy sleeve and so on. There's also a hoodie, yeah, there's dresses, hoodies, t-shirts, etc. Pants, uniform skirt, pants, long coat pants. If you want to design your own, I would definitely suggest using one of the white textures and using that as your base texture within Vroid or within your art software. Accessories, there's not a lot, but there's a few, like ribbon, a tie, and so on. You can always change that in the textures as well. And then shoes, finding which shoes you would like to use. If you do have this clipping problem, I will say if you do have this clipping problem, there is a toe shape option. So right now, as it's heel, you're going to want to make sure it's an angled. For this, I'm going to want to do socks angled because it was clipping a tiny little bit. Easy. Again, for textures, drawing on here, you can draw whatever pattern. So you wanna, I don't know what I'm drawing. A person, yeah, sure. Let's say this is a person. In a top. I don't know what this is. But yeah, you can draw whatever it is you want. Front, back, pants. If you want to make them another color in here without taking them to another software, you can do that. I'm going to make my thickness a lot higher. Let's say I want black pants. You can either have it entirely black like this, but if you would like the texture to show from beneath, you can change the opacity. Kind of make them like a little bit more like black grayish jeans. You can see the little texture underneath. I did this a lot for more simple designs. You can also do that with the heels, making it a similar kind of transparency if you would like it to be the same color. Alright, and then you're pretty much done. So at this point, after making all of the things, you can always adjust the hair, different parts of the face, body, sizing, etc. After that, you've already done the general. If you want to adjust outlines, if you would like to adjust the quote-unquote boing boing, as people refer to it as, this is actually the body amplitude under bone. You can heighten that. It will give you more quote-unquote boing boing. If you would like none at all, you can make it on 0. That is your time to do any final adjustments. Once you have done so, you can use the camera/exporter to do any kind of final tests, see what it looks like. If there's any clipping for clothing, you might need to erase specific parts of the body. This is pretty common under the arms and at the back of the shoulders. Other than that, you're pretty much ready to go. You can take any photos, background colors, etc., wind, facial expressions, so on and so forth, capture size, etc. Now that you have made your model, you're going to want to go to export and then just straight up export here. If you are doing any kind of tail or accessories, one step that is very crucial to you before you move on to Unity. You're going to want to go to Material Reduction right here. Click the drop down. See how this combined hair mesh is ticked. You're going to want to untick that. Basically, that makes sure that this will not be a single hair. If you do not click this, all of this is going to be classified as a single hair within Unity. Or maybe a couple, but it's not going to be the way that it needs to be. So make sure you untick this so that you can move all of it over. And then you are pretty much done. You have exported your thing. You can put your name, author, any kind of email contact info is not necessary. All of these things, I tend not to click any of them because it allows other people to use my models. It is my own personal model and I use it for other commercial purposes, so I do not click on these because I don't want anybody using my personal model. Then you are ready to chuck it into any kind of capture software that you have. Okay, so for demonstration purposes, I'm going to call this Vroid demo acapelisa. Then I'm going to save that. So here's the model. It's very simple, just for demonstration purposes, but here's the model that I made. See how the hair is super flowy. Having discovered that within my capture software prior to doing the tail, I might want to go back into Vroid and adjust the bones, the hair bones. For the tail, how I was saying, you're going to need to do Unity work. It's because it is not attached to my hips in any way right now. It is very much attached to my head. That is a more thorough explanation of what everything does within Vroid and how to do specific things. I hope this has been super helpful for you guys. If you have any other questions, feel free to chuck them in the comments down below. Or if you have any other suggestions on what you would like to see, let me know. Be sure to give it a thumbs up and to subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye guys!